Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the DfE Financial Benchmarking and Insights Tool Power Hour. So you'll have an hour with our experts to hear them demonstrate FBIT to you and for you to be able to put questions to them in the chat bar. Can I have the next slide, please? So I've mentioned, please pop your questions into the chat. We'll be able to answer any questions that we get in there, but not to a specific school or trust. So we won't be able to publish similar questions, so each one, but if there are questions in there that you like, please upvote them, and then that will allow the team to look at them and answer. So we are recording this and the slides will be shared to our education YouTube channel after the event. The slides will also be distributed to everybody who has registered. There's also, after the demo, there's a quick help us improve survey, which we would really love you to fill in and complete just to help us with our insights. So thank you very much. I'll now hand over to the team.
Thanks, Helen, and welcome everybody to this Power Hour on the Financial Benchmarking Insights tool, which we'll refer to as FBIT as we go through the webinar. And so I'll give my name's Kel O'Shea from the Department for Education, and I'm joined by colleagues Amy Matthews, Chris Clark, and Gavin Monument, and we'll give a introduction to FBIT, where it's come from, demonstration of the tool, and then there'll be a Q&A session towards the end. But as Helen mentioned, if you put any questions you might have as we're going through into the Q&A function, then we'll answer those as best we can as we're going along and refresh those when we get to the end. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, so in October of 2024 now, we brought together the two benchmarking tools that we had. They met specific aims, but we felt that providing them as one service would be better for schools. So what we did was we brought together the elements that people said that they liked in the school financial benchmarking website, along with the bits of the View My Financial Insights tool, brought them together into the one service. So it's just one service that we can now offer to schools. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've now just actually recently loaded the latest financial data for the Academy accounts return. The submission for that closed just on the 28th of January. But it's also got the maintained schools information for 24-25 as well. FBIT is available at school, trust, or local authority level, and can be used by anyone working or interested in school resource management. This can include governors and parents. It can help with benchmarking the school's spending against similar schools, providing tailored insights and commercial recommendations, identifying areas to consider for improvement, sharing best practice with other schools as well. Most of the service can be accessed without a login. It's only if you start tailoring things that you need to use your DSI account. And if there are elements which need a login during the demonstration, we'll highlight that. We're continually looking to improve FBIT and have used user research sessions to shape the developments and improvements to ensure that they work for you. So do consider if you can help us with our research and post something into the chat, or send us an email to the comms email address, which will be on screen a bit later on after the demonstration, which I think we'll now go to Amy for.
Thank you very much, Kel. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to do a demo of the service and run you through all aspects of it, including the new features that we've released relatively recently. So the service turns multiple data returns that the DfE and local authorities collect from schools into clear, comparable, actionable insights. Whatever your role, whether that's as a head teacher, a CFO, a school's business manager, a governor, or a policy colleague, it helps you examine, analyse and discuss resource management quickly and consistently. We ingest quite a lot of data. So as Kel's already mentioned, the Academy's account return, the budget forecast return, the consistent financial reporting, January school census, schools workforce census, condition data collection, SEN data, get information about schools, and Progress 8 for secondary only. We're especially pleased with the timeliness of our recent data releases. So the last two refreshes of the Academy's account return and the consistent financial reporting, we uploaded the new data almost immediately after the collection closed. So what you're seeing will reflect the latest published returns with very minimal lag. That reliability underpins everything that you'll see today. So let's find a school and dive in. So I'm going to click Start Now and select School. And I'm going to pick King Edward VII because that is a school that is familiar to me. So we'll let the school homepage load. I will say I have specifically chosen a secondary school here as one of our new features includes Progress 8 because we don't have Progress 8 for primary schools. I wanted to demonstrate using it at a secondary school, but the remainder of the journeys across the service are consistent between primary and secondary schools. So everything that I'm about to show you, you will be able to see at a primary school level too. So this is the school homepage. Busy people need fast signals. So at the top, we surface headline data and then 3 areas to investigate, which are down this right-hand side. These have RAG indicators. A quick word on these. So green means broadly in line with similar schools, whereas red means it's different to your peers. It's not bad, it's just noticeably different. Outstanding schools will often have some red RAG ratings by design, reflecting a conscious strategy. The goal isn't to make every school average, it's to understand why you differ and whether to act. It's also worth noting just down here, this new box in the front, which is the Progress 8 score. It's contextual information only on the school homepage. We do use this later in the service, and I will show you that later in the demonstration, but I did just want to mention that it is on all school homepages for secondary schools. So we'll come back to this page after we've set up a couple of core ideas. So the first of those is cost categories. FBIT groups into 9 different cost categories and 30 subcategories, which you see on my screen here. So for example, non-educational support staff costs include administrative and clerical staff, auditor costs, other staff costs, and professional services non-curricular. You can and should drill down into these subcategories, which I'll do later in the demo. We also want to set up the concept around comparator schools, and these are similar schools. So we compute 2 types of similarity, matching drivers of costs. So you'll have pupil-driven categories, for example, teaching and support, where we match on role size, pupil characteristics, such as SEN and free school meals, and then pull in geographically close near matches. You can check these we've chosen 2 sets of similar schools. There are also estate-driven categories, for example, premises, where we match based on gross internal floor area and building age, which again fall under building categories. These details aren't for building cost categories. Sorry, these aren't in the public domain, so I won't flick to them because I am currently logged in through DSI. You'll need your DfE sign-in to see your school's view, but as you can see, number of pupils with special educational needs and eligible for free school meals are publicly available. As I say, those are in the public domain, accessible to heads, governors, parents, journalists, and anybody else who wants to access the service. And as Kel mentioned earlier, I will point out where you need a DfE sign-in in order to see the information. So we've tested these visuals extensively. The design aims to show you at a glance where you are an outlier and by how much. Here, King Edward spends more than all of its 29 closest comparators in a couple of categories, and the slope shows the size of the divergence. So for administrative supplies, and if I scroll down ever so slightly to utilities, you'll see there's quite a big divergence. If I continue to scroll down, however, to say catering staff and supplies, they're higher than many, but the gap is much smaller, and therefore there's a different level of concern. For the next part of the demo, I'm going to pick a particular cost category to look into, and I'm going to use utilities costs for this. So if I click on view all utilities costs, You'll note in the top here that we're looking at this in pounds per square metres. You can toggle this to look at either actuals, percentage of expenditure, or percentage of income. These different lenses reveal different truths. So their high pounds per square metre might look different when you view it as a percentage of income. So you'll see they've gone from the top spender in their comparator to the fourth top spender in their comparator. If I scroll down now, in fact, let me switch to actuals first, down to energy costs, you'll see King Edward spends more than all of its 29 comparators on energy costs. If they reduce their energy costs to the level of the next closest comparator, the modelled gap suggests a significant saving of around £86,000 per annum. The takeaway here is the goal isn't cut it because it's red, it's interrogate, contextualise and act proportionally. I will flick back to per metre squared. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've included Progress 8 for secondary schools. At the top of the benchmark spending page, you will see these two little tick boxes. And if I click on those, what it does, you'll have seen just at the bottom of my screen there, is it overlays the schools that have above average, which is the sort of light blue, and well above average, which is the sort of tealy colour. We're only highlighting schools performing well above and above average, rather than all Progress 8 scores. So if I look at total expenditure at this point, I can see the schools with progress scores relative to my position. So King Edward's down here in the dark blue. So what it might be worth doing is if you're considering spending less, and it's probably best I use a particular cost category for this, what I might choose to do is only choose to look at schools that are spending less than me, but are also performing either well above or above average from a Progress 8 perspective. On all of the charts in the service, you can either save them as an image or copy as an image. This allows you to capture the visuals for reports to governors, trust boards, or LA panels. As I've just mentioned, you might want to use FBIT as a mechanism for learning from your peers. So from any table, you can click through to another school, for example, a low spender, and contact them. So I'm going to pick Highland School in this example. So if I click on them, it takes me to their school homepage. But if I scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see that there's a school contacts details button. And if I click on that, I will get the school contact details. Now, because this is all in the public domain, it will be publicly available phone numbers and websites that are shown. Signed in trust users will see additional contact information at this stage. I'm just going to flick back to spending priorities at this point, this page here. You will see down the right-hand side under all of the different cost categories, we've mapped priority areas to DfE frameworks, guidance and tools. So if I look at utilities, you'll see relevant procurement frameworks, checklists and good practice. You can also access all of these links from the school homepage. So if I click here, there is find ways to spend less, and this is where it collates all of the resources in one space. They will be sort of tiered by the different reg ratings, so those that are categorised as red will be at the top and those that are categorised as green will be at the bottom. Also worth noting, there's quite a few other bits of the service, and I don't propose we go through absolutely all of them, because even though we've got an hour, I'm still not convinced we'd managed to make our way through it all. But you can look at historical data, and so this is across spending, income, balance, and pupil and workforce. And of course, it would take a little while to load while I'm demonstrating it. But effectively, this gives you a good indication of how you performed over the past few years. For spending at the moment, that includes comparison to the national average and your comparator group average. We are looking at including the similar sort of metrics for income and balance. Those are in progress at the moment, so watch this space. If I go back to the school homepage again, you can also look at data sources. So this is where we include all of the financial information that goes into the service. That includes descriptions and cover notes. It currently includes the latest CFR release from last summer, and will shortly have the latest Academies accounts return file. We're expecting that in the next couple of weeks. I did want to show one new feature that we've put into the service relatively recently over the past sort of month or so, and that breaks down the composition of your SLT. You'll find this under pupil and workforce data. I'll let that load. So as with spend, you can view school performance overlaid on all of the charts. So again, if I click those buttons, you'll be able to see your above and well above average schools. You can also cut the graphs into either total, headcount per FTE, or pupils per staff role. You'll notice that the sort of default view is pupils per staff role. So if I scroll down at this point past all of the sort of teacher information and get to the senior leadership graph, because of those sort of progress overlays, there wasn't really a way of breaking down these bar charts in a meaningful sense that wasn't particularly overwhelming and ended up with a lot of different colours and almost certainly causing some confusion. So if you want to see how your SLT stacks up in comparison to your comparator group, there is a button down here where you can view more details on the composition of your senior leadership team. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And what you'll see now is that this graph has been effectively broken up into different colours. And if I hover over King Edward VII, you'll see here that there's one head teacher, one deputy head teacher, and 7 assistant head teachers. And it does that comparison again across all of your comparator groups. So Oaks Park High School, for example, is 1 head teacher, 5 deputy heads, 3 assistant heads, and 1 leadership non-teacher. Now, what you'll notice is in the sort of compare by drop down, you can't view this as a sort of per pupil metric, and the reason being is that would be particularly difficult because there will always be 1 head teacher regardless of the number of pupils in this example anyway, and so we've had to remove one of those options. However, you can still see the position as a percentage of workforce, and if I click apply, that will refresh and you'll see that the chart changes ever so slightly, and you're looking at it on a proportional basis. Given this is a new feature, we'd really welcome your feedback. As Kel said in the introduction, there will be an email address on the slide. So if you have any feedback about this feature or anything else that we're showing as part of this demo, please do let us know. We're always willing to hear what people would like to see more of, or even what they might want to see less of. At this stage in the demo, I am going to just sort of run through some of the bits that are hidden. Well, hidden is probably not the right word, but is behind the login. So if I go back to the school homepage, there is the curriculum and financial planning. So this is integrated curriculum and financial planning light, as we refer to it as. So build a workforce deployment plan that is aligned to future financials. It won't replace a mature ICFP process, but it is an easy on-ramp if you don't have one. You can also change your comparator group. So if I go back into the view all spending for this school, some of the options up here, you can create or save your own set of schools to benchmark against. This effectively allows you to define your own comparator sets. So if you want to do things on a sort of hyperlocal view or a variety of different views, this is the opportunity to do so. That new comparator set will be saved if you are logged in with your DfE sign-in account. You can also change the data for this school. So if you want to do data modelling or what ifs, or if actually there was a slight error in one of your returns and you just want to tweak for that to make sure that the information that the service is presenting back to you is accurate, you can do that using this feature. The edits do stay local, so you can't overwrite what's in the public domain. So anybody else looking at your school will see the information as it was submitted to us. At this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to looking at a multi-academy trust. So I've already set one up in the background in preparation. So I'm going to look at an over multi-academy trust. We condense complexity, so 9 categories across the 9 different academies in this trust. To create a sort of intuitive overview. It was a challenge trying to present all of this information in a useful way. So what you'll see is there's trust level outliers by category. So that's this table here. For example, educational ICT. You can see which academies are driving it if you click on these particular links. So if I click on premise staff and services and open that in a new tab, you'll be able to see that these are the 4 academies that are driving that particular cost category. Conversely, you can also look at this as a sort of academy level instead. So if I go back to the main trust page and jump to an academy, so for this one, I'll use Hallam Primary School. And again, I will open that in a new tab. This is because this has got the most divergent profile. You can drill into it and it looks exactly the same as it did for a single school. You're effectively just entering into this page from a different space. As we said before, red doesn't mean bad, it just means different and something that you might want to look into. The Trust homepage is designed to make it easier for CFOs and trustees to go from board level questions to specific actionable follow-ups. So as I mentioned on the school homepage, in setting up your own comparator sets, you can also do trust to trust benchmarking. The journey is relatively similar, and that's why I'm only choosing to show it to you once. So I'm going to do a trust to trust comparison for Innova Multi-Academy Trust. And I've got a couple of different options at this stage. And I should say it does require you to have a DfE sign-in login to access this feature. You can select the trusts that you're compared to, and you can do this in two different ways. So by name, so if you've got a list of trusts that you know you want to compare yourself to, you can quite easily do that. What I'm going to do in this example or in this demo is do it by characteristic. So if I click by characteristic and continue, I can select under multiple different options, so number of pupils, total gross internal floor area, school phases, all of those different options. And if I click on them, it effectively gives me some sort of range options to pick through, or a drop-down list depending on the category. For this demo, I'm going to do number of pupils, and so you can see that Innova Multi-Academy Trust has 7,409 pupils, so I'm going to do 6,500 as the smallest and 8,500 as the largest. And I'm also going to do it on number of schools. And again, Innova Multi-Academy Trust has got 9, so I'm going to go between 5 and 15 because I think that'll give me a reasonably good comparison basis. If I click continue, it will pull back effectively a list of different trusts. So you can see up top here, it's actually matched me to 49 trusts, but has selected the 9 closest matches using the characteristics that I selected. That's so you don't end up with a benchmarking comparator set that is just far too big and would ultimately take a really long time to load. So it's about trying to make the journey as smooth as possible. I'm going to create a set using these trusts, and I'm going to hope that it doesn't take very long in order to show you what the output is. Perfect, it didn't take too long. That's always a good sign. So you'll see that this is given me charts that look very, very similar to those at a school level, but obviously are just at a trust level. They do tend, the list does tend to be a little bit smaller again, so you're not looking at such a divergent group. But the graphs, the charts are effectively the same, and it's all done by the same cost categories. So once you've learned how to use one part of the service, it should be relatively straightforward for you to learn how to use another. You can view all of the charts across the service as tables, and you'll see that there'll be different, there are toggles in place for you to do that. And at a trust level, you can include or exclude any central spending. That will automatically refresh the data. So the last thing that I wanted to run through specifically at this stage was IT spend and the further breakdown of IT spend beyond what was in the service 12 months ago. So for academies, this comes from the BFR forecast and risk section. So I won't be able to click into that because it's technically proprietary. But if I go back to the trust homepage, it would be here. So you can see it requires a login. What I can do is I can show you that for maintained school because that is in the public domain. So the feature's almost identically placed. So if I click into benchmark IT spend, you'll see again, the charts are broadly similar across as they are across the rest of the service. And it just breaks down that IT spend into the categories that are either in the BFR forecast and risk or in the CFR return. You will notice that the filter panel is slightly different on this view. And so rather than it being in a little drop-down window up here, you will click into the different buttons and click apply. This is something that we are looking at the possibility of extending across the remainder of the service. So do watch this space. And again, if you have any feedback on this, please do get in touch. So that's the tour. Let's use the remaining time to explore your priorities, answer your questions and gather any feedback. If at any point during the Q&A there are particular questions about an aspect of the service, I'm more than happy to do another little demo of it. So do just let me know. The sort of on the horizon and the forward look from our perspective, we are doing some work on the high needs benchmarking tool through both an LA and a provider lens. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at income, revenue reserves and in-year balance benchmarking, so providing that comparison to your comparator group and to the national average. We're also having a look into our algorithm for finding similar schools. So we haven't changed it for about 7 years, and we're just testing whether we've got the balance right between the things that we're prioritising and whether we should do anything differently in that space. And we're also doing some really early exploratory work about where could we use AI in the service to provide greater insights and suggestions for your school in particular. As I've mentioned multiple times at this point, if you'd like to take part in user testing or if you have any feedback, please do drop us a line. It really does shape what we build next. And with that, I think I'm handing over to Chris and Gavin to run you through the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy. Yes, so Gav, we've got a few questions come in on the Q&A section whilst Amy's been going through the demonstration. So we had a question from Derek around the sample schools that FBIT selects. I'm not sure if the question is how come the FBIT system selects the representative sample of schools that is set up for an academy to compare against, or how does FBIT select the representative sample? But I don't know if you can maybe just touch on both there quickly.
Yeah, as Amy showed in the demo, we try to make that as visible as possible, and you can kind of see that list of your comparator schools both on the pupil characteristics and the building characteristics. There is some data behind the login for the building one, as Amy mentioned. The logic is that we use the statistics for your pupil ones. It's number of pupils, it's proportional free school meals, proportional special needs, and we find similar schools based on those factors by your phase. So there's a primary phase, a secondary phase, special, and from that long list, any that are within your region will make your final comparator group, and then the remainder of your comparator group will be made by those that are statistically the most similar. Building one works exactly the same way, but the metrics are gross internal floor area and average age of buildings taken from the condition data collection. Special, we do something a little unique with special. The data you return for school census highlights pupils with their main lead type of need, and we use that mix of your school need type to develop an algorithm for special schools. So, for example, it would be daft using the proportional with SEN in a special school because they all are. So we do try to make it a better service for special schools through that route.
Thank you very much, Gav. Just to say to people as well, we don't have many questions to go through in this session. So if you do have something on your mind, do just pop it into the Q&A and we've got people who will pick it up for you. But just linked to that on the comparators, Mrs. Besley has asked, can you remind me how I can change the set of trusts I wish to compare our trust against? I don't know, Amy, if that's something you could go back into and demonstrate again.
Of course, yes, just 1 second. Let me set up sharing my screen. So, was this trusts or schools? I just wanted to double check.
The question is trusts.
Trusts. So I will go back to my trust page. So trust to trust benchmarking. I can view and change my set of trusts. So if I decide that actually I no longer want to compare to this set of trusts, I can click into the buttons, click change, and I can either change my set to go right back to the beginning of the journey and effectively pick on characteristics, or if I just wanted to add another, I could pick one. So I'm hoping that Minerva isn't part of this list, because if it isn't, I should just be able to add into extras. I should have realised 9 is the maximum number of trusts, so I would have to remove one and then add in Minerva. But at that point, my set will have changed and I should just be able to refresh my information. And that will, as I say, go through the process again and give me a slightly different list. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Amy. Gav, back to you. Can you download and save the whole report rather than just saving or copying a single image?
There's a couple of options. Download the whole lot, no. That's not there. The reason for that is when we went out and tested it with users, it's a digital tool. It's designed to be used on screen, but people said to us, actually, what's the most useful is to be able to pick the certain graphs that make the most sense for their context and their schools, drop them into a separate report they're doing, add some contextual information, present that to SLT, present that to governors, however it is. So they wanted a much more flexible approach than just a download all. But right at the top of each page, you can download the page data. So you can do a whole page at a time if you wish to. I didn't include in the chat, there is a default summary report called the Financial Benchmarking Insights Summary. It's at the bottom of the page. If you click on that, that's kind of a predefined report which highlights some of the key metrics within the service. And it's kind of that replacement of what you used to get through the school benchmarking report cards, which were emailed out, but were kind of nothing to do with the rest of the benchmarking service. So we're always a little bit odd and potential to create some different results. So we've built that into the service. It uses FBIT data. So that is there, but that's the only default report that's in.
Thank you, Gav. How would any central leadership roles be reflected in the FTE and SLT costs at a school level?
Yeah, so if you're in the teaching and workforce section and you're looking at your SLT FTE, that data is coming from your school workforce census. Now that is all filled out at school level, so it will just depend on where you've put those central staff in as part of that return. We just pick up the data from there. So that's kind of already at school level. In terms of the costs, so we don't ask for SLT as a cost, we don't collect that anywhere, but it's more about the type of role. So I would imagine that within your accounts return, they're included as teaching, or your CFO might be in admin. Any central services, whether they are salary or whether they're non-pay, they're all shared out across your constituent academies based on pupil numbers. We also do tweak it slightly where there's a new academy that's joined the trust during the year, and we kind of give them a proportionate amount for that year. But that's the way we do it.
Thank you very much. I don't know if it was deliberate, Gav, but I think you covered off one of the other questions that has just popped in there as well. But how do we differentiate the data for schools that have outsourced areas, e.g. catering, cleaning, or IT?
Catering is easier to differentiate. So there's kind of two areas within the returns. So yeah, ultimately we kind of deal with the data the department collects. So it's kind of our limitation. But what it does collect on the catering space is it collects data for catering staff and kind of catering supplies, of which includes catering contracts. So what you can do in the catering space is, because we suppress any zero values, if you are part of a catering contract, you won't be employing your own staff. They'll be provided as part of the contract, and therefore there'll be zero there. So you can kind of look at it on that basis. You can also see your overall catering cost category, which is kind of the whole catering function added together. And that will obviously include for those who provide their own services, the cost of staff and the cost of supplies, food, etc. Within that. And for those who are in contracts, it will be the catering contract cost. So again, you should be able to see side by side effectiveness of different schools. The other thing we do on catering, just for completeness, is you also declare meal income, pupil paid meal income. So we include that in the service as well. So you can, on the catering cost category, you can toggle that to net costs, and it takes off the paid meal. And what that is it's almost like a proxy for the cost of providing free school meals. So again, that's kind of a useful metrics to do on the catering side. On some of the other metrics that I mentioned, ICT and the like, there isn't a separation within the data collection of bought-in contracts and provided services. So we can't do that. All we can show is what you're paying, you would probably need to reach out to those schools and have kind of conversations part of the link to the other schools that Amy showed.
Thank you very much, Gav. Previous experience on this tool is that there's a lot of variation on how expenditure is categorized within local accounts and then translating into the AAR, which can make some of the data more difficult to understand. Are there any plans to mandate the DfE chart of accounts?
It's not an area we can answer the question to. We're not responsible for the data collection. We are aware of the chart of accounts, but it's not something we can comment on because it's not our remit. Sorry.
Thank you, Gav. And the only other question that we have in currently is also from Mrs. Besley, which was the question around changing comparator trusts. How do you change the criteria for the set?
So I think that what you would need to do with that one, if you're changing the criteria, is go right back to the start. So click on change your comparator set and the kind of start again button, and then from that should take you right back to the beginning of the process, at which you can then select different characteristics to create a new set. So effectively, you've kind of got to unwind back to the very start.
Thank you very much, Gav. Okay, and that kind of concludes the questions that we have in the Q&A. So I think at this point, I'll hand back to Helen in the studio.
That's a lovely way of putting it. I do like it. Helen in the studio, right. As I mentioned, we really do need your insight, your feedback to help us improve, just to see what you out there at the front line, what you really need from us. So what we'd love you to do is take a moment, if you can, scan the QR code or sort of click the feedback form here. And just let us know. There's a couple of questions there, should be a minute or so. What DfE tools are the most useful to you? What are you using now? And then what would make the biggest difference to your school or trust? What is there that we aren't offering at the moment that we could offer? Be it service supplies or other tools that would make the biggest difference to you. So that would be really useful for us. Help us develop. Can I have the next couple of slides, Sam? We might gloss over one. This ideally is this goes straight to the FBIT team. So as they've mentioned, if you have any further questions, and if you'd like to take part in any of their developmental research, ideally please get hold of them, contact them on that email address. And the next one, Sam. And this is just, sort of unlocking more of maximising value for pupils, because all this is under our 4 pillars of support for you. So if you'd like to know more about the MVP programme, find out more about what we've got on our blogs, because we're always putting blogs forwards and we like new subjects for blogs, and our LinkedIn page, Buying for Schools on LinkedIn, which will have the adverts for all our webinars and power hours that are coming up for the rest of the spring term and then the summer term. Please have a look and follow us. Again, you can click on the QR code once you've got the slides through to you. Thanks very much, Sam. One more I think we have. And this is just a little plea from our user researchers, and they work across the DfE, and they're looking at all DfE services. So if you have some time that you think you could spare with user researchers. They really would like to hear from you. So again, this is a slightly different team, but they would really welcome anyone who can feed back in and help us work better and smarter. So thank you very much. And I think that brings the Power Hour to a close. If there are more questions going into the chat, I'm sure the team are still here for a while, but thank you very much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.